Bonjour, dear friends, and welcome on JCB Live this marvelous summer with the beautiful and charming lady, Michelle Bouffard.
Bouffard.
I love Bouchard, but Bouffard is even better. She's Canadian. She's an author, a master sommelier, and a great leader on climate change. So we're up to a great conversation. Bonjour, Michelle.
Bonjour. I'm not a master sommelier. I'm studying for the master of wine, but I'm not a master sommelier.
Well,
I'm a
even
sommelier.
more. Well, welcome with the JCB 69. You see, we live with bubbles at all time.
I love it. I love it.
So, Michelle, maybe we start with music because we want to learn how you got into wine. I understand you are a trumpet professional, so you play la trompette.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, I did my bachelor in classical trumpet. So I was trained to be in a classical orchestra. And I'm from Montreal, as you can hear the accent, there's a French accent there. And so I moved to Vancouver when I was 21 to study with the best trumpet teacher in North America. And when I got there, I didn't know anyone. And it was the first time that I had to earn money to help me pay for my studies in another way than playing music or teaching music. So I started to work in restaurant on the side because I didn't have yet people I knew over there to play and earn money as a musician. And so that's when I fell in love with music, with wine. So I was working in restaurants, and my boyfriend at the time said to me, every time you come back, you talk about wine all the time. You're kind of obsessed about wine. And so I said, no, I'm an artist. I'm never going to study wine like that. You know, if it's not music, it's going to be theater or something else, but not wine. So one year for Christmas, he registered me for a wine course just for fun. And that was it. I pretty much quit trumpet for wine.
And you fell in love with wine. Are you still with a boyfriend at the time?
No, but you know, he gave me something great, which is a wine interest.
So that shows that everything is possible as a woman, moving from music to wine and make a big career out of it. So maybe you want to tell us all about that as an inspiration to other ladies who may have a dream to get into wine.
Well, it's interesting because people often say to me, how could you go from music to wine? And I think it's so much of the same. It's history. You study history. It's sharing something, you know, someone created something. In that case, it's wine, but in music, you know, you listen to music and you hear that song with your boyfriend, with your friends. It creates a new memory. So it's about sharing. It's about history. It's about a place. It's about someone who created something. It's about culture. And what music gave me was discipline. When you study classical music, by the end of it, I was practicing 10 hours a day. And I just thought, because all of my friends around me were musicians, so I just thought that everyone is disciplined like this. And so when I quit music to study wine, I did the same thing. And that's when I realized that not everyone was like that, because I could see not everyone was studying hours and hours and hours a day. And so people ask me, what was the key to your success? And I think it's just discipline. I always say it takes a bit of talent, a lot of work, and a lot of dedication and discipline.
That's right. So, well, thank you for sharing that. This is certainly a great guideline for all of us. Now, you have a glass of white wine.
Yes.
I would love for you, and this is for all of you, dear friends, the famous Elizabeth Spencer Chardonnay from the North Coast and that beautiful area of Mendocino. Maybe, Michelle, you use music terms to describe this wonderful wine, so you could inspire us by using the notes of the melody rather than the actual world of Molière.
J'aime beaucoup. It's funny because when I educate, I do a lot of education. I often compare to wine to music. To me, this is something that's very accessible. Right? It's complex, but accessible. And there's a nice contrast between richness and freshness. and the oak is integrated. It's just a bit of a touch of oak. So, you know, I would not go like, I would not, for example, compare to Stravinsky, which is very angular and hard to get into. This is a music, even if you don't know, I'll think of, you know, if you think of in classical music, Debussy
Debussy, I love.
yeah, me too. Debussy is very complex, but someone who doesn't know much about it, it's easy to listen to, even though there's complexity to it. Where if you have Wagner, Stravinsky, it's also complex, but it takes a while to get used to it and to understand. So for me, your wine is a bit like Debussy, where there's something very accessible yet complex.
Ooh la la. This feels like getting to know you is the same thing, accessibility, but complexity. So maybe a powerful question for all of us this summer, because it's a perfect time to reflect as you have a gorgeous lake behind you. I'm sure you look at the horizon and you think about the future. What makes you think, Michelle, who you are today?
Oh, I think it's an accumulation of multiple things. I think curiosity, I think, is key. When you're curious, you know, I don't have enough hour in a day to do everything I want because I'm very passionate. So I think what defines me is extremely passionate, extremely curious, and hardworking and dedicated. And I think that's what makes me. And I think I was probably bored. I exhausted my mom because I was too curious, wanting to do everything. But I think, you know, discipline came with music. And I love knowing the other person. I like meeting people from all over the world and learning from the difference.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Well,
so
thank you for sharing. My favorite word is curiosity. I agree with you. I think it's the greatest form of intelligence, because if you keep getting curious, you become one, more knowledgeable, but your mind keeps being enlightened by new ideas.
yes.
So love for you to dive, if you can today, Michelle, into the world of the environment and climate change. Obviously, we are in the middle of the summer. All of us are over 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius, like we've never seen ever before. You've written books on the topic. You just came back from the Rhône Valley and Gigondas region talking about climate change. So give us maybe some enlightenment on this topic and on your book as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I would say that it's, of everything I do, it's something that's probably closest to my heart, is climate change. And unfortunately, it has become the topic of the hour, but it's something I've been researching since 2005. And I remember at the time, nobody was talking about it, and it was very difficult to find information. I always say, you know, you can get depressed about it, as you were mentioning. You know, you can hear all over the news, the storms, the drought, or if you become part of the solution, it takes the anxiety away, for me anyway. And so I see it as two kind of things that are important: adaptation. So if you're in the wine industry, what can we do? What kind of solution we can give people to adapt to something that, even if we can improve, it's ongoing. Like you know, the drought is happening. You know, the chaotic climate is happening. So what can we do to help the vine and the producer adapt? The other thing is, what can we do to mitigate climate change, to reduce our carbon emission? And sorry.
See, you always need more wine, you see. This is the drought of the throat. It's not the drought of the environment. You need to keep your beautiful mouth irrigated with this wonderful Chardonnay.
So I think, can you remind me the question so I can be precise, because there's so much to talk about?
How does climate change impact all of us as well today, and what we could do as citizens and consumers to obviously contribute to a better planet?
how does it impact? I mean, I would say it's the chaos in climate. I think we're seeing it. The day before I left for Gigondas, the north of Quebec was burning. We had firemen coming from Spain, from all over to help. At the same time, in Montreal, we had a tornado where the roads were closed because we had too much water, and some of the roof of the house were pretty much like, flying away. So that is climate change right now. Obviously, lots of challenges for producers, water becoming scarce. We have increases disease pressure. We're harvesting earlier, but we have more frost problem in many places of the world, as you know, in Burgundy. So lots of challenges. I like to focus on what we can do, and consumer often ask me, what can I do?
That's right.
First of all, 40% of the carbon footprint of a bottle of wine comes from the weight of a bottle of wine. So say no to heavy bottles. I do think that.
I'm glad you say that. Look at this beautiful Raymond, which was introduced all over Canada, a year ago, is actually below 400 grams a bottle. So we comply not only with the new regulations of Canada, but we forced our whole supply chain in California, which is, not as easy as it is in Europe, to move to lighter glass. So thank you. Maybe we could toast with this wine too. This is the Raymond Cabernet. Of course, Raymond, a very historical winery in the heart of Napa Valley. So, ooh la la.
I've been to that winery. I've been to your winery in California. Yes. And for me, that Cabernet Sauvignon is, I love Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa. There's something really comforting. I used to live in British Columbia, so it was a bit of in my backyard. And, it's something that I feel like I come home when I try a Cabernet from Napa. There's warmth, there's structure. They can age, we forget, because when they're young, they're so approachable, but they have the structure to age. And and I love that mix of kind of herbal, cassis, notes. I have a soft spot for Cab from Napa, from California. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Great description. So which musician and piece of music would that be, this one? If we were on the Chardonnay with Debussy and maybe Chopin, where are we here? We're not Stravinsky here.
No, I don't know that I would go in classical.
Would it be Elton John, George Michael? Would it be maybe John Legend?
I like Elton John.
We have a great relationship.
I love Elton John. All of my friends always say, oh, the French like Elton John. Yeah, I love Elton John. I just love it. I love Elton John. I'll go with that.
Okay.
I'll go with that. But I just want to go back to carbon footprint, because consumers think that heavy bottle means better quality wine. And I just want to thank you for, we need producers like you that are important and have a voice to change the mindset. And 40% of the carbon footprint comes from the bottle. If you include transport, it's 74%. So as a consumer, if you feel like you're doing some workout when you hold your bottle of wine, it's not right. So thank you so much. And also, I believe in certification, because if you have certification, the consumer, when they're left to their own device in front of a wine store and no one is there to help them, certification, whether it's B Corp, ISO, sustainable, all of those certification, they tell you that the producer is engaged in some kind of journey to be more sustainable. And that's something that we need to look at.
So Michelle, what inspires you to be so committed to climate change and this approach in the world today? Because you started a musician, wine lover, now climate change, and writing books about it. So maybe divulge to us what inspires you to do so.
I love the planet. I love, I want to preserve what we have for future generation. And I was lucky enough one day to meet someone who's really involved all over the world, not in wine, but in environment. He took part when they did the Paris Accord. He was there, and I don't want to name his name by respect, but he was someone who's highly known all over the world for the environment. And I said to him, I feel overwhelmed with everything that's happening, and I don't know where to start. And he said to me, when you start with your passion, you will start making change in your life in everything. For me, my biggest passion beside music is wine. And so if I was growing potatoes or carrots, I don't think wine is something that interests people. So I like to think wine as a message in a bottle to talk to the consumer. And once you start thinking the way you drink, you will start thinking the way you buy your food, the way you buy your clothing, the way you do everything. And so I hope that with wine, one glass of wine at a time, one bottle at a time, that I have a chance to educate wine professional, and hopefully they will pass down to consumer what the consumer can do.
Well, interestingly enough, in 2017, you wrote a great book. I love the title. Tell me who you are, I'll tell you what to drink. It's a play on the word of Brillat Savarin. Tell me what you eat and I'll tell you who you are. So it's a play on that. Tell us about that book.
So I love theater. I did theater as well. And for me, I felt when I wrote that book when I just moved back to Montreal from Vancouver. Montreal is a very exciting scene when it comes to the arts. We have amazing theater, amazing music, visual artists. And I wanted to reach the consumer. I felt the consumer was intimidated by wine, by all those complicated terms. So what I did is I met really famous artists on the Quebec and Canadian wine scene. They told me their stories. So I basically write a story about who they are. And inspired by their story, I will make comparison to a grape, to a place, to kind of educate the consumers. So for example, there's a famous singer in Quebec who was born in Gaspésie, and he loves going for lobster fishing. And so I talk about the wines that go with lobster, and kind of use his story to talk about why they go with it. So I wrote stories of artists to make a link with the wine, and it was a bit the bridge of my past and my present, my artistic background with the passion of wine to reach the consumer.
Well, that's a great book. Congratulations. Now tell us about the secret of the contribution you've done on many other books, including Vietnamese food.
Yes. So there's a very famous author. She's based in Montreal. Her name is Kim Thuy. Mm-hmm. She wrote multiple books. She was someone who was from Vietnam and came by boat as a refugee. And she did her law degree. Then she owned a restaurant, a Vietnamese restaurant that was quite known in Quebec, and then became an author. Now her books are published all over the world. She was nominated for the Nobel Prize of Literature. She didn't win, but she was the last runner-up.
Yeah.
And she wrote a book that was more a background on her owning a restaurant. And basically in Vietnam, she's from Vietnam. In Vietnam, if another woman asks you a recipe, your sister, your friend, you will always give the recipe with an ingredient missing, because you know that it's the way to the man's heart is to cook them good food. So when you receive a recipe from someone else, you're always wondering which ingredient is missing from what they gave you. So she wrote the recipes of her aunt, her cousin who raised her when she arrived in Canada. She was really young, from Vietnam. And she uses the recipe to tell secrets about her aunts, her cousin, about Vietnam. And she asked me to write a piece of which wines go sorry, someone is buzzing my door to deliver some wine. I will drink your wine and I will say no to them. So she asked which grape go well with Vietnamese food. So I use Riesling, and through Riesling, I actually telling her secrets about her that people don't know. So I use the grape to describe why they go with Vietnamese food, but also telling secret about her.
That's fantastic. Great thoughts. So a few more questions, Michelle. One which is important is, what message would you send to all the people listening to us this summer? You know, the peak of climate change, yourself from a professional musician to leading symposium on climate change, to writing books on wine, to studying Master of Wine, to being curious. What's your big message to all of us?
I think we can never underestimate what one person can do. You know, whether you're aspiring to be a teacher, whether it's climate change that interests you. You know, I remember when I was in high school, I still remember the teacher that taught me, that had an impact on me, that carries me today. So when you're overwhelmed in front of the challenge, let's say with climate change, don't feel like it's a drop into the ocean. That drop is really important. That's how you feel the glass, and that's how you feel the ocean. And that's my biggest advice. We all have the power of doing something on this earth.
Well said. Now, maybe the last secret you want to share. What is the dream that you have that maybe you have not yet achieved?
In wine or in general?
Whatever.
I have
It could be
two.
in love, it could be in passion, it could be in emotion. It could be, oh, I wish I would play the piano now, or I would be this lead singer. And not
I'm a terrible singer, so that's not possible. There's two. So in terms of not wine related, I've been fortunate to travel, and I know it's not really carbon friendly, and I'm really trying to reduce my travel, but one day I want to go to India. That's something that I do a lot of yoga in my life, and I want to go there for a certain amount of time and do a yoga retreat for an extended amount of time in India. So that's not wine related. Wine related, and it's not going to be concrete what I'm going to say, and I don't know which kind of form and shape it will take, but my dream is that the conference I started in 2017, the next edition will be in January 2024. I just hope that, you know, one person at a time, I can help make a change. And that's not a very specific dream, but it's kind of a collective dream that I can inspire others to be part of that change.
Well, congratulations. Those are wonderful dreams. We share them with you. We admire all what you've done and your curiosity and all that you're about to do. So, Michelle, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. And I know that you're involved with climate change. I know there's a lot of things that you do in that regard, and I really want to thank you for that.
Well, to tasting more wine together in lighter glass and organic. Cheers.